The sound of a gunshot ripped through the evening air as Genevieve Sinclair ducked behind a water trough, her heart hammering in her chest. This wasn't how she had imagined her first week as sheriff of Montezuma, Colorado, would go. The year was 1876, and the small mining town nestled in the mountains was supposed to be her fresh start, not her early grave. "Come on out, Sheriff," the drunken voice of Bart Willows echoed down the dusty main street. "A pretty little thing like you ain't got no business wearing that star." Genevieve checked her Colt revolver, confirming she had 4 bullets remaining. Her deputy was out of town delivering a prisoner to Denver, leaving her alone to handle the unruly miner who'd decided to shoot up the saloon after losing at cards. She took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. "Mr. Willows—" "Put down your weapon," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will if necessary." A mocking laugh was the only response, followed by another wild shot that splintered the wooden post near her head. From the corner of her eye, she spotted movement, a tall figure moving quietly behind the general store, circling around to flank the shooter. In the fading light, she could make out a worn Stetson hat and the glint of a rifle barrel. Before she could process who her unexpected ally might be, the stranger called out, "Willows, the lady asked you to drop your gun. I suggest you listen before you make the biggest mistake of your sorry life." The distraction was all Genevieve needed. She rose from her position, weapon trained on the drunk miner, who now looked confused and outnumbered. "Last chance, Willows," she said firmly. The miner wavered, then slowly lowered his pistol to the ground, raising his hands in surrender. "This ain't right," he muttered. "A woman wearing the star. It ain't natural." Genevieve approached cautiously, keeping her gun trained on him as she retrieved his weapon and secured his wrists with handcuffs. Only when the man was safely locked in the small jail cell did she allow herself to breathe normally again. She stepped back onto the boardwalk to find her mysterious helper leaning against a post, his rifle now resting casually over his shoulder. In the light from the jail's lantern, she could see him clearly for the first time, tall and broad-shouldered with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His dark blonde hair was slightly too long, curling at the edges beneath his hat. "I appreciate the assistance, mister." She trailed off, waiting for him to supply a name. "Noah Abernathy," he said, tipping his hat. "Just rode into town looking for work. Didn't expect to find a gunfight." "Sheriff Genevieve Sinclair," she replied, offering her hand. "And that wasn't a gunfight. That was a drunk fool who doesn't think a woman should wear a badge." Noah took her hand, his grip firm but not overbearing. "Well, Sheriff, I'd say you handled yourself just fine. Though your aim could use some work." She raised an eyebrow. "My aim? Saw you fire twice, missed both times." His mouth curved into a half-smile that was somehow both irritating and charming. "I wasn't trying to hit him," Genevieve retorted. "Unlike some cowboys who ride into town, I prefer not to fill my jail cells with bodies." Noah's smile widened. "Fair enough, Sheriff. I'll remember that about you." There was something in his tone that suggested he intended to learn more, but Genevieve was determined to maintain professional distance. The last thing she needed was another man underestimating her abilities. "What brings you to Montezuma, Mr. Abernathy, besides critiquing the local law enforcement?" "Heard there was work with the Double R Ranch outside town. They're looking for experienced hands, and I've been working cattle since I could walk." Genevieve nodded. The Double R was owned by Richard Reynolds, one of the more reasonable ranchers in the territory. "Mr. Reynolds is fair to those who work hard. You could do worse." "And what brings a woman like you to wear a badge in a place like this?" Noah asked, curiosity evident in his expression. "A woman like me," she couldn't keep the edge from her voice. "Educated, Eastern from your accent. Pretty." He said the last word matter-of-factly, as though commenting on the weather. Genevieve felt a flush rise to her cheeks, but refused to acknowledge it. "I'm qualified. That's all that matters." "No argument here," Noah replied, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Just wondering what makes a woman choose to face down gunslingers in a mining town when she could be elsewhere." Same reason anyone comes west, Mr. Abernathy. A fresh start. She turned toward the jail, indicating their conversation was over. Thank you again for your help. Good luck at the Double R. Noah touched the brim of his hat in a respectful gesture. Sheriff, he said by way of farewell, before heading toward the town's only hotel. Genevieve watched him go, trying to ignore the strange flutter in her stomach. Something told her Noah Abernathy would be trouble, the kind of trouble she couldn't afford if she wanted to keep her position as sheriff. The town council had only reluctantly given her the badge after her predecessor, her uncle Samuel, had been wounded badly enough to force his retirement. They'd made it clear that her appointment was temporary until they found a suitable man for the job. She intended to prove them wrong, and that meant avoiding distractions, particularly tall, handsome distractions with easy smiles and steady gun hands. Inside the jail, Willows was already snoring on his cot. She'd release him in the morning with a fine and a warning. The incident report could wait until then. For now, she needed rest and time to think about her encounter with the mysterious cowboy. Little did she know that Noah Abernathy was thinking about her too as he settled into his room at the Montezuma Hotel. He'd come to town with a purpose far more complex than simply finding ranch work, and the beautiful sheriff with the determined eyes had just made his mission considerably more complicated. Morning arrived with the harsh brilliance typical of the Colorado mountains. Genevieve had slept poorly, her dreams filled with gunshots and piercing blue eyes. She rose early, splashed cold water on her face, and dressed in her usual attire, practical trousers, a buttoned shirt, and a vest that helped conceal the curves that often led men to underestimate her. She pinned the sheriff's star to her chest last, feeling its weight as both a burden and a privilege. After releasing a shamefaced Willows with a stern warning and collecting his fine, she made her rounds of the awakening town. Montezuma had begun as a small mining settlement but had grown into a respectable community over the past decade. Silver and copper from the surrounding mountains brought prosperity, while the nearby ranches supplied beef to the miners and townspeople alike. At Peterson's Cafe, she accepted a cup of coffee from Martha, the owner's wife, who had become one of her few female friends in town. "Heard about your excitement last night," Martha said, sliding a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her. "Also heard you had help from a handsome stranger." Genevieve sighed. "News travels fast." "It's Montezuma," Martha replied with a smile. "If you sneeze on one end of town, someone says, 'Bless you' on the other. So, who is he?" "Just a cowboy passing through, looking for work at the Double R." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Ed Miller was in earlier, said the stranger handled himself like he's done more than just rope cattle." Genevieve frowned. She'd had the same thought. Noah moved with the alert confidence of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. "Well, many ranch hands know how to use a gun. Comes with the territory." "If you say so," Martha said, unconvinced. "Just be careful. We like having you as sheriff, even if some of the old fools on the town council don't appreciate a woman with a badge." "I appreciate that, Martha, but I can take care of myself." "Never said you couldn't. Just saying a little caution never hurt nobody." Genevieve finished her breakfast, paid Martha, and continued her rounds. The town was coming fully alive now, with merchants opening their doors and the clang of the blacksmith's hammer creating a familiar rhythm. She headed toward the telegraph office to send a message to her deputy, checking on his expected return. As she passed the general store, she spotted Noah Abernathy loading supplies into saddlebags beside a handsome buckskin horse. He wore the same clothes as the night before, though he'd clearly taken time to clean up. His jawline was smooth from a fresh shave, highlighting his strong features. He noticed her approach and straightened. "Morning, Sheriff." "Mr. Abernathy, getting an early start?" "Heading out to the Double R. Mr. Reynolds agreed to meet me this morning about the job." Genevieve nodded. "Good luck, then." Noah secured his saddlebags and turned to face her fully. "Sheriff, before I go, I wanted to apologize if I seemed forward last night. It wasn't my intention to question your capabilities." She studied him, surprised by the sincere apology. Most men in these parts would sooner swallow their spurs than admit they'd been wrong about a woman's abilities. Apology accepted, Mr. Abernathy, though I'm curious what changed your mind. Had a conversation with the hotel owner. Said you tracked down the Henderson gang last winter when they robbed the bank, followed them through a blizzard and brought them all in alive. He sounded genuinely impressed. That's no small feat, especially in these mountains. Genevieve remembered that pursuit all too well. 3 days of frozen misery, tracking the gang through snow-choked passes. I was just doing my job. Well, it's a job not many could do, man or woman. Noah checked the cinch on his saddle. If I get hired on at the Double R, I expect we'll be seeing more of each other. I suppose we will. The ranch hands come into town on Saturday nights, usually. Noah mounted his horse with the easy grace of someone who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. Maybe I'll see you then, Sheriff. Try not to get into any gunfights while I'm gone. His smile took any sting from the words. I'll do my best, Mr. Abernathy, she replied, finding herself returning his smile despite her better judgment. She watched him ride out of town, heading north toward the Double R property. Something about the cowboy intrigued her, though she couldn't put her finger on what it was. Perhaps it was simply that he had apologized, a rare enough occurrence in her experience. The telegraph office yielded news that her deputy would return the following day, allowing her to focus on the stack of paperwork awaiting her attention. The territorial governor had been sending increasingly urgent requests for reports on criminal activity, particularly regarding a gang that had been robbing stagecoaches between Denver and the mining towns. By mid-afternoon, Genevieve was deep in concentration when the door to her office burst open. Frank Wilson, who drove the supply wagon between Montezuma and the neighboring towns, stumbled in, his face pale beneath his trail dust. "Sheriff, there's been a holdup at Carter's Pass. The Blackwater Gang, they took the payroll for the Silverton mine." Genevieve was on her feet instantly. "Anyone hurt?" Frank nodded grimly. "Shot the guard. He's alive, but barely. Doc Jenkins from Silverton's tending to him." "How many were there? Did you see which way they headed?" "4 men, all masked, headed east into the foothills, I reckon. They were quick about it, professional-like." The Blackwater Gang had been terrorizing the territory for months, but they'd never struck this close to Montezuma before. With her deputy away, Genevieve faced a difficult decision. "Frank, I need you to send telegrams to the neighboring towns and to the territorial marshal in Denver. Tell them what happened and that I'm in pursuit." She began gathering her gear, checking her revolver, and retrieving her Winchester rifle from the rack. "You ain't going after them alone?" Frank asked, disbelief evident in his voice. "Do you see anyone else wearing a badge in this room?" Genevieve replied, strapping on her gun belt. "I can't wait for help that might take days to arrive. The longer I delay, the colder their trail gets." "But Sheriff, I've tracked men through these mountains before, Frank. I can do it again." She pulled on her duster and grabbed her hat. "If my deputy returns before I do, tell him where I've gone." Frank looked like he wanted to argue further, but recognized the determination in her eyes. "Yes, madam. Just be careful. These aren't drunks or card cheats. The Blackwater Gang are killers." "I'm well aware." Genevieve checked her saddlebags, making sure she had enough provisions for several days. "If I'm not back in a week, send the marshal after me." 20 minutes later, she was riding out of town on her gray mare, following the eastern trail toward Carter's Pass. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent, giving her perhaps 4 hours of daylight to find the gang's trail. She pushed her anxiety aside, focusing on the task at hand. This was her job, her duty to the people of Montezuma and the surrounding area. She reached the scene of the robbery as the sun touched the western peaks. The stagecoach sat abandoned on the narrow mountain road, its strongbox forced open and empty. Blood stained the rocky ground where the guard had fallen. Genevieve dismounted and examined the area carefully, finding boot prints and horseshoe marks leading east into a rugged ravine. The tracks confirmed 4 riders, just as Frank had said. She remounted and followed the trail, pushing deeper into the wilderness as twilight gathered. When darkness finally made tracking impossible, she made a cold camp in a sheltered hollow, not risking a fire that might alert the outlaws to her pursuit. As she huddled beneath her blanket, pistol close at hand, Genevieve found her thoughts drifting to Noah Abernathy. There was something in his manner, in the way he handled himself, that suggested he was more than a simple cowhand. She wondered if he might have been useful on this hunt. She dismissed the thought. She'd been handling her responsibilities alone for months now. One charming smile from a stranger didn't change that. Morning brought a light drizzle that would make tracking more difficult. Genevieve pressed on, following signs that became increasingly faint as the rain washed away the outlaw's trail. By midday, she had reached a fork where the path split between a narrow canyon and a steep trail that wound up toward the ridgeline. She studied both options, looking for any sign that would indicate which way the gang had gone. As she deliberated, the crack of a rifle shot echoed through the mountains, followed by the distinctive sound of gunfire being exchanged. The shots came from the direction of the canyon. Urging her mare forward, Genevieve rode cautiously toward the sound of conflict. As she neared a bend in the canyon, she dismounted and proceeded on foot, rifle ready. The gunfire had ceased, replaced by shouting voices. "Drop it or I put a hole through you." She recognized that voice, Noah Abernathy. Peering around a boulder, she saw a scene that made little sense. Two men lay on the ground, unmoving. Another stood with his hands raised, facing away from her position, and there was Noah, rifle trained steadily on the standing man, his buckskin horse nowhere in sight. "Where's Reeves?" Noah demanded. "Gone," the outlaw replied. "Took the money and rode out at first light, left us to cover his trail." "And you believed he'd come back for you?" Noah's laugh was harsh. "Reeves doesn't share, and he doesn't leave witnesses. You're lucky I found you before he decided to tie up loose ends." Genevieve stepped into view, her rifle trained on both men. "Drop your weapon, Abernathy." Noah's head snapped toward her, surprise evident in his expression. "Sheriff? What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question," she replied coldly. "You're a long way from the Double R. Put down the rifle. Now." For a tense moment, she thought he might refuse. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon to the ground. "This isn't what it looks like," he said carefully. "It looks like you're involved with the Blackwater Gang," Genevieve replied. "Are these men dead?" "Just the one," Noah answered. "The other's unconscious, and I'm not with them. I'm hunting them, same as you." The standing outlaw suddenly lunged for his fallen pistol. Without hesitation, Genevieve fired, her bullet striking the ground inches from his hand. He froze. "Next one goes through your hand," she warned. "Lay face down, arms spread." The man complied, cursing under his breath. Genevieve approached cautiously, keeping both men covered. "Explain yourself, Abernathy, and it had better be good." Noah met her gaze steadily. "I'm not just a cowboy, Sheriff. I'm a Pinkerton agent. I've been tracking the Blackwater Gang for 3 months, all the way from Kansas City." Genevieve's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that? You show up in my town, conveniently assist me with a drunk, then just happen to be out here where the Blackwater Gang was last seen?" "I didn't just happen to be here," Noah replied, his patience visibly wearing thin. "I came to Montezuma because we had information that James Reeves, the leader of the Blackwater Gang, was planning something in the area. I wasn't expecting to run into you." "Where's your identification?" she demanded. "In my saddlebag. My horse spooked during the gunfight and ran off, probably halfway back to town by now." Genevieve kept her rifle steady. "Convenient." "Sheriff, we're wasting time," Noah said urgently. "Reeves has at least a 6-hour head start. If we don't catch up to him soon, he'll disappear into the New Mexico territory with that payroll money." "We?" she echoed. "Yes, we. You know these mountains better than I do. I know Reeves. Together, we might actually have a chance of catching him." Genevieve hesitated, considering her options. The unconscious outlaw was stirring now, moaning softly. She needed to secure both prisoners and decide what to do about Noah's wild claim. "Here," Noah said, slowly reaching into his vest pocket. "This isn't my Pinkerton credentials, but it might help convince you." He withdrew a folded paper and held it out to her. Keeping her weapon trained on him, she took the paper with her free hand and unfolded it. It was a wanted poster for James Reeves, leader of the Blackwater Gang, with a reward of $1,000 for his capture. Scrawled on the back in neat handwriting was a message. Abernathy intelligence suggests Reeves planning major robbery near Montezuma, Colorado. Proceed immediately. Wire Denver office upon arrival. Williams, Chief of Operations, Pinkerton Detective Agency. It looked authentic, but Genevieve remained skeptical. This could be forged. It could be, Noah agreed. But ask yourself this. If I were with the Blackwater Gang, why would I have shot 2 of my own men? Maybe there was a disagreement over the money. Noah sighed. Sheriff, I understand your caution, but right now, Reeves is getting further away with every minute we waste arguing. Let me help you catch him. If I'm lying, you can arrest me too. Genevieve looked at the 2 men on the ground, then back at Noah. His eyes held steady, unflinching under her scrutiny. She made her decision. First, we secure these 2, then we talk about Reeves. Noah nodded, visibly relieved. Fair enough. Together they bound the outlaws, using rope from Genevieve's saddlebags. The wounded man regained consciousness, cursing them both colorfully until Noah gagged him. He'll live, Noah said, examining the bullet graze on the outlaw's arm, though he might wish otherwise when he's facing a judge. What happened here? Genevieve asked as they worked. I tracked them from the robbery site, planned to follow them to wherever they were meeting Reeves, but they spotted me and opened fire. Noah secured the final knot. I returned fire, winged this one, and knocked out the other when he tried to rush me. The 3rd man is dead, took a bullet in the chest from his own partner's wild shot. Genevieve frowned. And Reeves wasn't with them? No. According to this charming fellow, Reeves took the money and left them to create a false trail. Classic tactic of his, he uses men, then discards them. So we have no idea where Reeves actually is, Genevieve said, frustration evident in her voice. Not exactly, Noah replied. Based on previous robberies, Reeves has a pattern. He doesn't run straight to the border. He holds up somewhere safe, waits for the initial search to die down, then moves on. There's an abandoned mining camp about 15 miles east of here. It would be a perfect hideout. Genevieve knew the place he mentioned, Elhorn, a silver mine that had played out 2 years ago. That's reasonable, but we can't just leave these men here. Noah considered the problem. My horse likely headed back toward town. We could secure these 2 at that old line shack we passed about 3 miles back. It's sturdy enough to hold them until we can send someone from town to collect them. It wasn't ideal, but Genevieve saw the logic. If Reeves escaped into New Mexico with the payroll, it could be months before another opportunity to catch him arose, if ever. All right, she said finally. We'll secure them at the line shack, then go after Reeves. But understand this, Abernathy. I'm still the law in this territory. You follow my lead. Wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, Sheriff, Noah replied, the ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. It took them over an hour to get the prisoners to the line shack. The dead outlaw they left where he had fallen, covering him with rocks to keep scavengers away until they could return. At the shack, they secured the 2 men inside, using spare chains from Genevieve's saddlebags to ensure they couldn't escape. They have water and enough food for a day, Genevieve said as they mounted her gray mare together, an arrangement that put them in closer proximity than she found comfortable. They'll be uncomfortable but alive when we get back. Let's hope the same can be said for us after we confront Reeves, Noah replied, settling behind her. He's not known for his hospitality. Tell me everything you know about him, she said as they set off toward Elhorn. I want to be prepared. As they rode, Noah shared what he knew of James Reeves, a former Confederate officer turned outlaw after the war, known for meticulous planning and ruthless efficiency. The Blackwater Gang had robbed banks and stagecoaches across 3 territories, always vanishing before the law could mobilize. Pinkerton's has been after him for 2 years, Noah explained. I've been on his trail personally for 3 months, ever since he robbed a bank in Kansas City and killed 2 guards. Just when I think I'm close, he slips away. How did you know he'd be in Montezuma? Genevieve asked, still not entirely convinced of Noah's story. We caught one of his men in Denver. Before he died, he mentioned Reeves was planning something big in the mining country. Montezuma was the most likely target, small enough not to have a large law presence, but with enough mining activity to make it worthwhile. And the Double R Ranch? Was that just a cover story? She felt him shrug behind her. I needed a reason to be in the area. Ranch work is something I know. Spent half my life on a cattle ranch in Wyoming before joining the Pinkertons. The trail grew steeper, forcing them to slow their pace. The rain had stopped, but dark clouds threatened more to come. They rode in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Why did you become a sheriff? Noah asked suddenly. You never did answer me last night. Genevieve considered deflecting the question again, but found herself answering honestly. My uncle was the previous sheriff. He taught me everything I know about tracking, shooting, and upholding the law. When he was wounded last year, the town had no immediate replacement. I'd been serving as his unofficial deputy for years, so I stepped in. And the town just accepted a woman sheriff? Hardly, she said with a short laugh. The town council made it clear my appointment was temporary, but I've proven myself time and again. They haven't found a suitable man who knows the territory as well as I do. That can't be easy, Noah observed. Nothing worthwhile ever is, she replied. What about you? How does a Wyoming ranch hand end up as a Pinkerton agent? It was Noah's turn to hesitate. My brother was killed during a bank robbery in Cheyenne. The men who did it were never caught. I decided then that I wanted to help bring criminals to justice. The Pinkertons gave me that opportunity. Something in his voice made Genevieve think there was more to the story, but she didn't press. They had more immediate concerns. By late afternoon, they reached a ridge overlooking the abandoned mining camp of Elhorn. From their vantage point, they could see the cluster of weathered buildings nestled in a narrow valley. Most of the structures were in various states of decay, but the mine office and assayer's building still stood relatively intact. There, Noah said quietly, pointing to a thin wisp of smoke rising from the chimney of the assayer's office. Someone's there. Genevieve studied the camp through her field glass. I only see one horse outside the building. If it's Reeves, he's alone. That would be his style, Noah replied. He works with others when necessary, but he's a loner at heart. Doesn't trust anyone. How do you want to handle this? Genevieve asked, then caught herself. I'm open to suggestions. Noah smiled slightly at her correction. Direct approach won't work. He'll shoot first and ask questions never. I suggest we wait until dark, then approach from different directions. Catch him between us. Genevieve nodded. There's a stand of pines on the western edge of the camp. I can circle around and come in from that direction. You approach from the east where those old ore carts are. We'll converge on the assayer's office. They retreated to a small ravine to wait for nightfall, securing her mare where she wouldn't be easily spotted. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped sharply, a reminder of the mountain elevation. Huddled in the shelter of a rock overhang, they shared the remaining food from Genevieve's saddlebags. If this works, Noah said as they ate, the reward money for Reeves is substantial. I'm not interested in rewards, Genevieve replied. I just want him to face justice for the men he's killed. Noah studied her in the fading light. You're unlike any woman I've ever met, Sheriff Sinclair. She felt her cheeks warm at his direct gaze. I'll take that as a compliment, Mr. Abernathy. It was certainly intended as one. His voice had softened, and for a moment, the air between them seemed charged with something more than just the anticipation of the coming confrontation. Genevieve cleared her throat and stood. It's dark enough. We should get into position. Noah rose as well, checking his borrowed pistol. Be careful. Reeves is dangerous, especially when cornered. I could say the same to you, she replied. Don't get yourself killed. I'd hate to have to explain that to your Pinkerton superiors. His smile flashed white in the darkness. I'll do my best to spare you the paperwork, Sheriff. They separated at the edge of the camp, Genevieve circling wide to approach from the west, while Noah moved toward the eastern perimeter. The night was clear and cold, stars blazing overhead in the vast Colorado sky. She moved silently from shadow to shadow, her years of tracking experience serving her well. As she reached the pine stand, she could see light flickering through the windows of the assayer's office. A silhouette moved across one of the windows, a tall man, apparently alone as they had suspected. Genevieve drew her revolver and continued her cautious approach. She was within 30 yards of the building when a floorboard creaked beneath her boot. The sound seemed deafening in the quiet night. Instantly, the light in the assayer's office went out. "That's far enough," a harsh voice called from inside the building. "I've got a shotgun aimed at the door. Anyone comes through gets cut in half." Genevieve pressed herself against the wall of an adjacent building, heart racing. She needed to create a distraction for Noah to get into position. "James Reeves," she called out. "This is Sheriff Sinclair of Montezuma. You're surrounded. Come out with your hands up." A mocking laugh answered her. "A female sheriff? Now I've heard everything. Sorry, lady, but I'm not surrendering to anyone, especially not some woman playing lawman." "Your men are already in custody," she replied, hoping to unsettle him. "They told us everything. There's no escape." "Nice try," Reeves called back, "but I work alone, always have." A gunshot rang out, splintering the wood near her head. Genevieve ducked lower, trying to spot Noah's position in the darkness. There was no sign of him. "Next one won't miss," Reeves warned. "Walk away, Sheriff. That payroll isn't worth dying for." "4 guards might disagree," she replied. "One of them has a wife and 3 children. How will they manage now that you've killed their father?" "Occupational hazard," Reeves said coldly. "He chose the job." Another shot rang out, but this one didn't come from the assayer's office. It came from somewhere to the east, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Noah had made his move. Reeves cursed loudly. The muzzle flash of his return fire illuminated the interior of the building briefly. Genevieve used the distraction to dash toward the front entrance, keeping low. More shots were exchanged as Noah and Reeves fired at each other through opposite windows. Reaching the door, Genevieve tried the handle. Locked. She stepped back and kicked hard just beside the latch. The weathered wood splintered, the door crashing inward. "Drop the gun, Reeves!" she shouted, entering with her revolver raised. The outlaw spun toward her, his shotgun swinging in her direction. Genevieve fired twice in rapid succession. Reeves staggered but didn't fall. His shotgun discharged with a thunderous roar, the blast going wide as he struggled to stay upright. From the window, Noah fired again. This time, Reeves collapsed, the shotgun falling from his hands. He lay motionless on the rough wooden floor, blood spreading beneath him. Noah clambered through the broken window, his expression grim. "Sheriff, are you hit?" Genevieve shook her head, feeling slightly dazed by the deafening shotgun blast in the confined space. "I'm fine." "Check Reeves." Noah knelt beside the fallen outlaw, pressing fingers to his neck. "He's alive, but barely. Took at least 3 bullets." "We need to stop the bleeding," Genevieve said, holstering her weapon. "Then find the stolen money." They worked together to bandage Reeves's wounds with strips torn from a blanket found in the building. The outlaw remained unconscious, his breathing shallow. "He might not make it to town," Noah observed grimly. "We have to try," Genevieve replied. "He deserves a trial, not bleeding out on a dirty floor." Noah nodded, respecting her commitment to proper justice despite everything. "Let's find that payroll and get back to our horse. Dawn's not far off." The stolen money was discovered in Reeves's saddlebags, along with several other valuables from previous robberies. They fashioned a crude travois to transport the wounded outlaw, knowing the journey back would be slow and difficult. As they prepared to leave, Noah paused, looking at Genevieve with new respect. "You know, most lawmen I've worked with would have been happy to see Reeves die here." "I'm not most lawmen," she replied simply. "No," he agreed softly. "You're certainly not." The journey back to the line shack was arduous. Reeves drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally mumbling incoherently. They reached the shack by mid-morning to find both prisoners secured as they had left them, though considerably more vocal in their complaints about their treatment. "Shut up," Noah told them tersely. "You're lucky to be alive. Your boss here usually doesn't leave witnesses." The outlaws fell silent at the sight of their wounded leader. By afternoon, they were making their slow way back toward Montezuma. Genevieve rode her mare, while Noah led the horse they had recovered from Reeves, now pulling the travois. The going was slow, and they were forced to make camp for another night in the mountains. As they sat beside their small fire, exhaustion setting in after the events of the past 2 days, Genevieve found herself studying Noah's profile in the flickering light. There was a gentleness to his movements as he tended to Reeves's wounds that contrasted with the hard efficiency he had shown during the confrontation. "You're good at this," she observed, caring for the wounded. Noah glanced up, a shadow of something painful crossing his features. "Had practiced during the war, served as a field medic for a while." "You were in the war. How old are you?" 28 now. Was just 17 when I enlisted. Lied about my age." He finished changing Reeves's bandage and moved back to the fire. "Saw things no boy should see. Did things too." Genevieve heard the weight of memory in his voice. "We all have pasts we'd rather forget. Some more than others." Noah poked at the fire with a stick. "What about you? What's your story, Sheriff Sinclair?" She hesitated, then decided there was little harm in sharing. "I was raised back east, Boston. My father was a lawyer who believed women deserved the same education as men. He taught me to read law books before I was 12. How'd you end up in Colorado?" "My mother died when I was 16. Father couldn't bear to stay in Boston after that. He had a brother, my Uncle Samuel, out here who had done well for himself. We came west to start over." She smiled faintly at the memory. "I hated it at first. The dust, the roughness, the lack of society. But Uncle Samuel saw something in me. Started teaching me to track, to shoot. Said I had a natural eye for detail. He sounds like a good man. The best. When Father died of pneumonia 3 years later, Uncle Samuel became my family. He was sheriff by then. I started helping around his office, learned the law from the practical side. When outlaws shot him last year and the doctor said he'd never walk right again, I took the badge. Temporarily, the town council said. But they haven't replaced you." Genevieve shrugged. "They've tried. Brought in 3 different men over the past year. 1 left after a week. 1 turned out to be wanted in Nevada. The 3rd was competent enough but had a fondness for whiskey that interfered with his duties." "And you've proven yourself repeatedly," Noah observed. "Yet they still look for a suitable man." "That's the way of things," she replied matter-of-factly. "I don't expect to change how men think. I just do my job better than anyone else can." Noah smiled at that. "I believe it. The way you handled yourself with Reeves, I've worked with veteran lawmen who wouldn't have kept their composure like that." His praise warmed her more than it should have. "What will you do after we get back to town? Return to the Pinkertons?" "I'll need to wire my superiors first. They may have another assignment." He hesitated. "Or I might request some time off. Montezuma seems like an interesting place." Their eyes met across the fire, and Genevieve felt that strange flutter in her stomach again. This time, she didn't immediately try to suppress it. "It has its moments," she said softly. They fell into comfortable silence, the crackling fire and Reeves's labored breathing the only sounds in the mountain night. The following day, they reached Montezuma by late afternoon. Their arrival caused quite a stir, the sheriff and a strange cowboy bringing in the notorious James Reeves and 2 of his gang. Doc Miller was summoned immediately to tend to Reeves, while the other outlaws were secured in the jail cells. Noah's horse had indeed returned to town, and with it his saddlebags containing his Pinkerton credentials. The town council, initially skeptical of his story, became considerably more cooperative when faced with official identification and the recovered payroll money. "The Silverton mine manager is beside himself with gratitude," Mayor Harrison told them as they sat in his office after giving their report. "They're authorizing a reward for both of you." "The reward belongs to Sheriff Sinclair," Noah said firmly. "I was just doing my job." "Nonsense," Genevieve countered. "We work together. The reward should be shared." Mayor Harrison looked between them with obvious amusement. Well, that's for you two to sort out. In the meantime, the council has asked me to express our appreciation for your exceptional service, Sheriff. It seems we've underestimated you. Again, Genevieve added pointedly. The mayor had the grace to look abashed. Yes, well, it appears our search for a permanent sheriff may be unnecessary after all. If you're willing to continue in the role, the council is prepared to make your appointment official. Genevieve couldn't hide her surprise. Are you serious? Quite serious. Your capture of the Blackwater Gang has attracted attention beyond our little town. The territorial governor himself sent a telegram commending your bravery. The council feels, well, we feel it would be foolish to replace someone so clearly qualified for the position. I see, Genevieve said, trying to maintain her composure despite the surge of vindication she felt. In that case, I accept. Excellent. The mayor rose, clearly relieved. We'll make the formal announcement at the town meeting next week. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other matters to attend to. As they left the mayor's office, Noah couldn't contain his grin. Congratulations, Sheriff. Officially this time. Thank you, she replied, still processing the unexpected turn of events. Though I'm not sure it would have happened without your help. Oh, I think you would have managed just fine, Noah said. You were hunting the Blackwater Gang before I arrived. I have no doubt you would have caught them eventually. They walked together toward the telegraph office, where Noah needed to send a message to his Pinkerton superiors. What will you do now? Genevieve asked as they paused outside the office. Wire my boss, as I said. Then, he glanced at her, something warm in his gaze. I thought I might take that job at the Double R after all. At least for a while. I thought that was just a cover story. It was, Noah admitted, but I find myself wanting to stay in Montezuma longer than planned. The town has certain attractions that have caught my interest. Genevieve felt her cheeks warm at his implication. Mr. Abernathy, are you flirting with the local law enforcement? Would that be inappropriate, Sheriff? He asked, his smile turning slightly wicked. Highly, she replied, but couldn't help returning his smile. Though I suppose I could look the other way this once. Noah laughed, the sound rich and genuine. I'll send my telegram and meet you at the cafe afterward. I don't know about you, but I could use a real meal after days of trail rations. I'll be there in an hour, Genevieve agreed. I need to check on my prisoners and clean up first. They parted ways, each feeling the subtle shift in their relationship. What had begun as suspicion and professional necessity had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. Over the next few weeks, Noah settled into life in Montezuma. True to his word, he took a position at the Double R Ranch, earning the respect of the other hands with his skill and work ethic. Richard Reynolds, the ranch owner, quickly recognized Noah's leadership abilities and gave him increasing responsibility. Genevieve, meanwhile, adjusted to her now official position as sheriff. The respect she received from the townspeople had noticeably increased following the capture of the Blackwater Gang. Even the most vocal critics of having a woman sheriff had fallen silent in the face of her proven competence. Noah made a point of riding into town every Saturday, sometimes on ranch business, but always finding time to visit the sheriff's office. Their conversations ranged from discussing local matters to sharing stories of their past adventures. Each week they grew more comfortable with one another, their professional respect evolving into genuine friendship and, increasingly, something deeper. One Saturday evening in late autumn, Noah invited Genevieve to dinner at the hotel restaurant, the closest thing Montezuma had to fine dining. She accepted, changing from her practical work clothes into a simple but elegant blue dress that she rarely had occasion to wear. When Noah arrived to escort her, his appreciative gaze made her feel more feminine than she had in years. He himself had made an effort, wearing a clean white shirt and black vest that emphasized his broad shoulders. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," she replied, feeling uncharacteristically shy. "You clean up rather well yourself." The restaurant had prepared their finest table, complete with a white tablecloth and candles, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Genevieve. I think the whole town is watching us, she murmured as they took their seats. Noah glanced around at the not-so-subtle stares from other diners. Let them watch. I'm having dinner with the most interesting woman in Colorado. I can't say I blame them for being curious. His straightforward confidence put her at ease, and soon they were engaged in comfortable conversation, oblivious to the attention they attracted. Noah spoke of his childhood on the Wyoming ranch, of his parents who had instilled in him a strong sense of justice, of his brother whose death had changed the course of his life. Genevieve, in turn, shared more about her Eastern upbringing, her father's progressive views, and her determination to prove that a woman could uphold the law as effectively as any man. I've never told anyone this, she admitted after their main course, but there are days when I wonder if I'm fighting a losing battle. If, no matter how well I do this job, people will always see the badge first and the woman second. Noah considered her words thoughtfully. Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. The badge represents something important: justice, protection, order. Being seen as the embodiment of those things. There are worse fates. But it's not just the badge they see, she countered. It's the novelty of it being worn by a woman. I sometimes feel like a curiosity more than a lawman. At first, perhaps, Noah acknowledged. But you've earned their respect through your actions. That's something no one can take from you. His understanding meant more to her than he could know. Most men either dismissed her concerns or offered patronizing reassurances. Noah did neither. He simply listened and responded with genuine thought. As they walked back to her small house after dinner, the night air crisp with the promise of winter, Genevieve found herself reluctant for the evening to end. They paused at her front porch, the moonlight casting soft shadows across the wooden planks. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "It's been a long time since I've enjoyed an evening so much." Noah stepped closer, his eyes reflecting the silvery light. "I feel the same way. In fact, every day I spend in Montezuma makes me more certain I made the right choice in staying." "And how long do you plan to stay?" Genevieve asked, her voice softer than she intended. "That depends," he replied, reaching gently for her hand, "on whether I have a reason to make it permanent." Her heart raced at his touch, at the implication of his words. "Noah, I know it hasn't been long," he said quickly, "and I'm not asking for any decisions tonight, but I want you to know that my feelings for you have grown far beyond admiration or friendship." Genevieve looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his expression. In that moment, all her carefully constructed defenses seemed inadequate against the simple truth of what was happening between them. "I feel the same," she admitted quietly, "but I don't know how to balance this, whatever this is, with who I need to be for this town." "Why should you have to choose?" Noah asked. "You're Sheriff Sinclair, the most capable law officer I've ever worked with. Nothing about how I feel for you changes that. If anything, it only deepens my respect for you." His words washed over her like a balm. For so long, she had believed that embracing her femininity would somehow undermine her authority, that allowing herself to care for someone would make her vulnerable in ways she couldn't afford. "I'm not an easy woman to love," she warned him. "I'm stubborn, I work too much, and I have a habit of riding off after dangerous outlaws." Noah smiled. "And I'm a former ranch hand turned detective who can't seem to stay in one place for long. Perhaps we're both a bit difficult. Maybe that's why we fit." He leaned closer, hesitating just enough to give her the chance to pull away. Instead, Genevieve closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened with shared emotion. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Noah kept her hand in his. "I should go. You have early rounds tomorrow. You remember my schedule?" "I pay attention to what matters," he replied simply. Genevieve squeezed his hand before reluctantly letting go. "Good night, Noah." "Good night, Sheriff," he said with a smile, stepping back and tipping his hat in a gesture that was both playful and respectful. She watched him walk away, her emotions a complex mixture of excitement and trepidation. For the first time since taking the badge, Genevieve allowed herself to consider a future that included more than just her duty to Montezuma. The winter months brought heavy snows to the mountains, slowing life in Montezuma to a peaceful rhythm. Noah's visits became more frequent as ranch work diminished in the cold weather. He had taken to assisting Genevieve with her duties when needed, his Pinkerton experience proving useful on several occasions. By Christmas, their courtship was common knowledge in town. Rather than undermining her authority as she had feared, Genevieve found that most townsfolk seemed pleased by the development. Martha from the cafe had pulled her aside one morning to express her approval. "About time you found someone who appreciates all of who you are," the older woman had said. "That man looks at you like you hung the moon and stars, but he doesn't try to dim your light. That's rare." The town's annual Christmas celebration brought everyone together in the church hall, decorated with evergreen boughs and candles. Genevieve attended in her finest dress, a deep green velvet that complemented her auburn hair. Noah, looking distinguished in a black suit, never left her side throughout the evening. As they danced to the music provided by local musicians, Noah held her closer than propriety strictly allowed, but no one seemed to mind. "I have something to ask you," he said softly, leading her toward a quiet corner when the dance ended. "That sounds serious," Genevieve replied, her pulse quickening at his expression. "It is," Noah acknowledged. "I received a letter from the Pinkerton agency yesterday. They've offered me a permanent position heading their new Denver office." Genevieve felt her heart sink. Denver was more than a day's journey from Montezuma. "I see. When would you start?" "That depends on my answer," Noah said, "and my answer depends on you." "On me?" Noah took both her hands in his. "Genevieve, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You are the most remarkable woman I've ever known, strong, principled, compassionate. I can't imagine my future without you in it." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Opening it, revealed a delicate gold ring set with a modest diamond. "I know it hasn't been very long," he continued, "but when something is right, you don't need time to know it. I love you, Genevieve Sinclair. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Genevieve stared at the ring, then at Noah's hopeful face. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind: her duty to Montezuma, the practicalities of marriage, the distance to Denver. But overwhelming all of these was the simple truth that she loved this man and couldn't imagine her life without him either. "Noah, she began, her voice catching. "What about my position here? The town needs a sheriff." "And you are the best sheriff they could hope for," Noah replied earnestly. "I'm not asking you to give up your badge. I turned down the Denver position." Surprise flickered across her features. "You did? But it's a significant opportunity." "There will be other opportunities," he said firmly, "but there's only one you. I've spoken with the Pinkerton agency about establishing a smaller office here in Montezuma. With the mining operations expanding and the railroad coming through next year, they agree it makes strategic sense." "You would do that? Give up advancement for me?" "It's not giving up anything," Noah insisted. "It's choosing what matters most. Besides, working alongside the most competent sheriff in the territory seems like advancement to me." Tears welled in Genevieve's eyes, tears of happiness she didn't try to hide. "In that case, yes, I will marry you, Noah Abernathy." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into an embrace that drew applause from the townsfolk who had been not so subtly watching the exchange. Mayor Harrison approached them, beaming widely. "Seems congratulations are in order. When's the happy day to be?" Noah looked to Genevieve, leaving the decision to her. "Spring," she said decisively. "When the mountain pass is clear and travel is easier. I want Uncle Samuel to be here." "A spring wedding it is," Noah agreed, his arm still around her waist. "If the sheriff can spare the time from her duties, that is." Genevieve laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I think the sheriff can arrange for a day off, especially for something this important." The news of their engagement spread quickly through Montezuma and the surrounding area. Letters of congratulation arrived from neighboring towns, and even the territorial governor sent his best wishes to the remarkable Sheriff Sinclair and her fortunate fiancé. Spring arrived with an explosion of wildflowers across the mountain meadows. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in May, with the entire town turning out for the celebration. Uncle Samuel made the journey from Denver, where he had settled after his retirement, his pride evident as he walked his niece down the aisle of the small church. Genevieve wore a simple white gown adorned with lace at the collar and cuffs, her auburn hair arranged in an elegant twist, crowned with forget-me-nots. Noah, waiting at the altar, looked at her with such undisguised adoration that several of the town's more romantic ladies were seen dabbing at their eyes before the ceremony even began. The service was brief but heartfelt, the couple exchanging vows they had written themselves. Noah promised to stand beside her in all things, to support her dreams as his own, and to love her with unwavering devotion for all his days. Genevieve, her voice steady despite the emotion evident in her eyes, pledged her heart, her loyalty, and her partnership in all life would bring. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Noah's kiss was both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night, with food, music, and dancing in the town square. As twilight descended, Noah pulled his new wife away from the festivities for a moment of quiet togetherness. "Happy, Mrs. Abernathy?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Extremely," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Though I think I'll keep Sinclair for professional purposes. Sheriff Sinclair has a certain ring to it that I've grown attached to." "Sheriff Sinclair it remains then," Noah agreed readily, "while I get the privilege of knowing the remarkable woman behind the badge." They returned to the celebration hand in hand, their future stretching before them like the vast Colorado sky, boundless with possibility. In the years that followed, Montezuma prospered with the completion of the railroad line and the discovery of new mineral deposits in the surrounding mountains. The small Pinkerton office that Noah established became an important regional headquarters, his reputation for integrity and effectiveness growing throughout the territory. Genevieve continued as sheriff, her methods becoming legendary for their combination of firm justice and compassion. When outlaws learned that Sheriff Sinclair's jurisdiction lay across their path, many chose alternate routes, a testament to her growing reputation. Together, Noah and Genevieve built a life that balanced duty with personal happiness. Their home, a comfortable two-story house on the edge of town, became known for its warm hospitality and lively discussions. The arrival of their first child, a son they named Samuel after Genevieve's uncle, only strengthened the bonds of their unusual but deeply satisfying partnership. When their daughter Elizabeth was born 2 years later, followed by twin boys, James and William, the following year, their family felt complete. The children grew up understanding that both their parents served the community in important ways, a legacy of duty and honor they would carry into their own lives. On their 10th anniversary, Noah surprised Genevieve with a special gift, a silver star identical to her sheriff's badge, but engraved on the back with words that captured the essence of their journey together. "To GS, once called Trouble, always my answer to every prayer, with eternal love, N.A." As they stood together on the porch of their home that evening, watching the sunset paint the mountains in hues of gold and crimson, Genevieve reflected on the unexpected path her life had taken. "When I took the badge, I never imagined finding someone who would see me as both the sheriff and the woman," she said, leaning against Noah's solid presence. "And when I rode into Montezuma tracking outlaws, I never expected to find the answer to prayers I didn't even know I was making," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. Behind them, the sounds of their children playing filled the house with life and laughter. Before them stretched the town they had helped build and protect, and between them flowed the deep, abiding love that had begun on a dusty street with a gunfight and a stranger's unexpected assistance. In a time and place where survival often depended on strength and determination, They had found something rare and precious, a partnership of equals, a love that enhanced rather than diminished their individual strengths, and a shared commitment to justice that made their corner of the Wild West a better place for all. For the woman once called Trouble and the man who saw her as the answer to his prayers, it was more than enough. It was everything.